Well, throughout the South, the search for the missing continues as communities continue the recovery effort from this historic storm. Historic levels of rain, violent winds last week. The death toll has now reached more than 200 people, with over half the fatalities so far from North Carolina's mountainous regions. Join me now to discuss this, Congressman Mike Waltz. He serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He represents the 6th Congressional District of Florida, and he's the author of a new book coming out October the 22nd, Hard Truths, Think and Lead Like a Green Beret. He's the only Green Beret to ever been elected to Congress. Congressman Waltz, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, hey, Tony, always great to be with you, and God bless everybody that's with you right now.
Well, we've got a big crowd here listening and watching. I want to go to this issue of the response. Now, I understand you've been through this many times being in Florida. I've been through it in Louisiana. These storms are intense. They're big. The federal government's only one spoke in the wheel, but there's been a lot of criticism of the federal government response. Is that justified?
I do think it's justified, Tony. I mean, thank God for our fellow Americans like the Cajun Navy and what I'm calling the Florida Man Air Force. People that are bringing their boats, their helicopters, their light planes, anything they can to come up there and help. But they can only do so much. That's kind of a ragtag effort. They're doing what they can to bring in supplies to our fellow Americans that are stranded. But my point is, right down the street, literally, is Fort Bragg that houses the 82nd Airborne, the 18th Airborne Corps, the Joint Special Operations Command. A little further down the street is the 2nd Marine Division at Camp Lejeune. They have mobile air traffic controllers. They have dozens of helos, mobile hospitals, all the supplies, food supplies, what have you, that you need. When they were deployed to help with Hurricane Katrina, they had the orders ready to go on day 2. And President Bush got down there on day 2, and he was criticized heavily then.
Right.
We've been now over a week, and I'm talking to these guys and gals, they're ready to go. They still don't have the orders. And the 1,000 that Biden belatedly mobilized is a drop in the bucket. We're talking 10,000 square miles here in the mountains with impermissible roads, and whole communities have been washed away. It is too slow, too late, but that's par for the course with this administration.
And the difference here with this storm compared to some of the others we've seen is that what you mentioned, the infrastructure, the roads being washed out, accessibility, many of these areas, and I've been each day on the program, we've had someone, either a member from those areas affected, or we've had Samaritan's Purse on. Most of these areas can only be reached by air. And when you talk about the military, they have those assets. They could easily put them into place.
Yeah, that's right. And again, it's not like we're asking them to go halfway across the country. Right. Fort Bragg is just 100 miles away, and it's not an Air Force base with a bunch of fighter jets. I mean, this is what they do. Right. They've also gone into Haiti in the wake of earthquakes. They've gone into Africa. They need to go and help their fellow American. They're willing to do it. They're waiting on the orders from the Pentagon. Those should have been pre-positioned, Tony. All the bureaucracy, you can have all of the orders, the funding, everything in place. And then if you don't need it, fine. We do that in Florida and Louisiana. The forecasters were clear that this was going to be a massive flooding event in Georgia and North Carolina. This was just a total lack of preparation. Some were saying, I'm not willing to say this yet, but a lack of concern, frankly, coming out of this White House.
Let me ask you this question, Congressman Mike Waltz, because what we've heard from the administration has been, well, we don't have the money. FEMA is going to run out of money. We need Congress to return to allocate more money. And I actually was talking to the House Speaker this morning, and it has been very clear that the CR that was approved last week before Congress left included additional money to deal with natural disasters for relief. But is this a case of misplaced priorities rather than a case of a lack of resources?
Yeah, well, I mean, to invoke the title of my book, The Hard Truth, here's the hard truth, is that Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, he has the authority, should he choose to use it, to move funds from account to account under emergency orders and statutes. I mean, Lord knows we have seen them do this when it comes to things they want to do. All the executive orders they both revoked from the Trump administration and put in place when they wanted to do something when it came to illegal immigrants and both the housing, the feeding, the supplies, the transportation. They could do it if they wanted to, Tony. We're talking billions of dollars that have been spent to help non-citizens, and fellow Americans are suffering, literally dying right now in the mountains of North Carolina. It's unacceptable. It's wrong.
I want to put a fine point on that. We only have about a minute and a half left, Mike, but the FEMA allocated last year, this year in grants over $1 billion, close to over $1.5 billion in immigrant resettlement into this country. But they say they don't have money to help Americans who are facing the suffering in the wake of this disaster. Something's wrong with priorities.
No, it's absolutely, it's upside down priorities. But I think it's a reflection of really this administration's focus. And it gets to, we can pull the thread to how they kind of, progressives view the world through black, white, and brown, when we should be only seeing red, white, and blue, right? We're just fellow Americans, period, or you're not. And you are afforded a different level and a higher level of prioritization from our own government that we paid for if you're a U.S. citizen, period, full stop. And Mayorkas could do it, and if he needs to come back to Congress to backfill his account, fine. But he could do it right now. I'm not buying it for 1 second.
Yeah, essentially the only thing that fixes this is an election. You've got to get an administration that cares about America, maybe America first. Congressman Mike Waltz, thanks so much.
I'm worried about how these people are going to vote, speaking of the election and the need for North Carolina, but another time.
Yeah, but in Florida, you had mobile voting sites through some hurricanes. Maybe that's something that needs to be looked at as well. We're out of time. Mike, thanks for joining us.